I'm a full-time veterinarian and I run my own business and I'm mobile. The majority of my practice is performance-based, so whether they're horses that are competing or dogs, I do see the occasional cat as well, but mostly my patients are all performance-based. So we're looking at keeping them as healthy and successful in whatever field or discipline they're doing, which I think is so important. So what helps me is when I'm walking the course, I will listen to certain music that I've kind of associated with that dog's rhythm and cadence when they're running. I was thankful that I had the background with the horses, that I was just like, well, whatever, I'm just gonna do the best and have fun with my dogs and see how it goes. And it's gone really well. I think being able to just relax, enjoy the process, enjoy the journey, and not worry about it so much.
A quick word before we start the episode. If you haven't yet subscribed to this podcast and you really enjoy the content, please do so. You can do that on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or you can also go over to Dog Agility Performance and listen to the podcast there. If you find this episode really inspiring and that there's a lot of good points that you would like to share with your friends, please do so. If you post it on social media, feel free to tag me as well. That's fantastic. And if you are ready, able, and willing, which is one of the principles that I use, ready, able, and willing, it's called the RAW principle, to take your dog agility performance to the next level. There's a link in the description to the community that I have. You can check it out. There's a 14-day free trial. But now let's head over to the episode with Roxane, and I hope you enjoy. Hi, and welcome to episode with the Champion's Journey. Today I have Roxane Pardiac, all the way from Canada. For her, it's early in the morning. For me, it's in the middle of the day because we have 6 hours time difference. So kudos to you to showing up early in the morning with coffee and everything. So thanks for coming.
Good morning.
I wanted to start off because you were recommended to be a guest on the show. And I always like when people recommend people because then I can get to meet new people, hear new stories. And I met you many times, but we actually never talked. But I met you at AWC, European Open. I've even seen you at WAO. And when I start to do some research behind this, and I wanted to start with this because Team Canada actually has all of their teams for several years on their website. So that was a great tool. I wish all the teams had that. But going back to 2016, small dogs, Roxane and Ole, I'm not sure if it's individuals, but you also, and that was European Open, but you also had two dogs in large the same year.
Yes. Torrent and
One,
Whiplash.
yeah. And you then also went with Ole in small individual and team.
Yep.
At AWC in Spain.
Yep.
That was 2016. Let's go to 2017. AWC again with Ole in individual and team. And European Open, you went with Ole again. And then with Whiplash and in large.
Yep.
Going over to 2018. I have bragging rights because
You do.
it's not me.
I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. But it's important. Again, small individual, AWC in Sweden, Roxane and Ole in small. But you didn't have a large dog that year, and you didn't go to European Open.
No, my large dog, Whiplash, was considered a mixed breed because he's a Border Collie, but I didn't have any papers because he was a rescue.
Yeah. And that's an interesting topic that we're going to cover.
Yeah,
and then,
he's a special guy.
And then, of course, we had COVID and all the challenges there in 2020, 21. Going over to AWC in Austria, you then show up in large with Chit Chat in large, and then Gotcha in small.
Yep.
And in European Open, you run with two dogs. It was Chit Chat and Kapow.
Yep, in large, yep.
And in small, you have Gotcha again. and we're now entering 2023, and the list just goes on. And it's not just one dog; it's two dogs, three dogs in different classes, and I remember when it's a long list, and even in 2023, you went to European Open with three dogs in large. How many dogs do you have?
12.
12 dogs.
I have 12 dogs. Yes, they're all around me right now, but they're all sleeping because they were not happy with waking up at 5 a.m.
Yeah, I got it. But it's just fantastic. And in addition that you go to Denmark, which is on the opposite side of the Atlantic Ocean for you, with four dogs, three in large and one in small, and you run European Open. And also you do two dogs at AWC in Czech. And yeah, like how do you manage doing that?
Well, I'm lucky because they're really good at traveling, and so we've kinda have a system, and they all get along, which makes life easier too, and then the small dog just goes in a bag, which is
Mm.
nice, but that's usually why people see me at events and don't necessarily talk to me because 'cause I'm running around trying to get dogs and get organized and make sure everybody's getting walked, and but, yeah, I've been really fortunate, like, I've had quite the gang of dogs that have been phenomenal. And that year in Denmark, I took my Whippet as well, so I was super thrilled to be competing with a Whippet internationally, so he was awesome. So it was very fun.
Yeah, and one thing that people that don't know you, they're probably guessing that, oh, but she's probably a full-time agility handler since she has 12 dogs and traveling with four to a European Open, or but that's not the case either, is it?
No, no, so I'm a full-time veterinarian, and I run my own business, and I'm mobile, so I go to farms and work on horses. The majority of my practice is performance-based, so whether they're horses that are competing or dogs, I do see the occasional cat as well, but mostly my patients are all performance-based. So we're looking at keeping them as healthy and successful in whatever field or discipline they're doing, which I think is so important, and conditioning is so important as well for these animals, and I'm part of their team, so it's awesome. So they do not like how much I travel, so I try to keep it on the down low and come back, and then everybody's fine.
Yeah, very good. And so the purpose of this podcast is really to, first of all, people like you that don't necessarily have a big Instagram account, you
Or
have no
any.
post, no post on your Instagram account.
I have no time.
Yeah, and that makes sense when with
Yeah.
that introduction. Um, but it's really for you to sort of give us some space and sort of to shine, because I think it's important for you. Um, like I told you before we started the podcast episode, you don't seem like a person that brags a lot about your
No.
accomplishments, and it's probably uncomfortable for you.
Yes. Yes,
But
it
I think
is.
that I think people like you are important to have on the podcast because you could be a person that a lot of people relate to as well. But But I really want to hear your story in terms of how was life before agility and how did you get into it? Let's start there.
So I was actually a hunter jumper rider, and I started riding horses when I was 8, and then continued competing at a high level and loved it. But when I got into vet school, I made it about a year with my horses, and then I had to sell them because I was just too busy. I wanted to be able to focus on my studies and be able to work in different fields rather than just in training horses. That was one thing that I did to help me get through school as well, is that I would ride and train horses, and that paid for a lot of my university. And then once I sold the horses, I had all this free time and I missed the competition aspect. And so and I had, of course, I had 2 Jack Russells because that's what you do when you're in horses. And one of my friends was like, "Well, have you ever tried flyball?" So I started doing flyball with them, and it was cool. Like, I really liked the training part of it. But I found, like, once we were racing, it wasn't as exciting for me, and then somebody suggested, "Well, have you ever seen agility?" And I was like, "Oh, it's like show jumping. That makes sense." So then started competing in that, and I trained probably, I guess I'm trying to think, I started in 2004, and then that was my terrier at the time her name was Monroe, and we ended up qualifying for AWC in 2008 in Finland. And that was so eye-opening. And you go there, and I was just shocked by everything going on and all the training on the dogs, and it just really inspired me to want to do better and go home and train and then started getting other dogs. My next dog was a Kelpie, and she was amazing and so much fun. And then I also got a golden retriever because my husband at the time wanted golden, so we did that, and he was really cool. And we were alternate for AWC, I believe, in 2014 when it was in Czech. So that was really awesome.
With the golden?
With the golden. Yeah. I've had a
Nice.
variety of breeds.
That's cool. Do you know how many Goldens actually have been on AWC like since 2000?
In Canada, I don't know, but in Canada, I know that there was 2 other Goldens for sure. One of them was the mother of my dog, so yeah.
Cool. So my initial research was not sufficient in a way because you go way back in terms of AWC.
I do, yeah. Yeah, so but then it was started more consistently once I got Ole. That was my other parson, and his first AWC was when it was in Bologna, so the year before Spain.
Yeah. So that's
Yeah.
2015 then.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just thinking too, because yeah, it was 2014, right, for Bologna, and then I had the terrier, and then for EO, that's more when I had the Kelpie and the Border Collie, well, the rescue, yeah.
And that's also an interesting thing with you that you mentioned that I didn't know is that you trained several rescue dogs
I
that you've
did,
taken on.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm a bit of a sucker, and they've come into the clinic, so Whiplash, he has a phenomenal story. He's so special. He's 15 and a half right now. And he came into one of the clinics that I was working at the time before I was doing my own business full time. And they just asked me to stop in because there was an older dog that needed to be put down because he was sick. And I was heading to a horse call. So I pulled over, stopped, and went in. And it turned out he was only a year and a half. And the poor people were just exasperated. They were from the city, moved to the country, bought property, went, oh, I need a border collie, bought a border collie, and then chained him up outside, and then got sheep and put it in with him. And he just lost his mind. So he was like gripping the sheep, and he had bitten some of the baby's ears. So they deemed that he was really aggressive, and then none of the rescue organizations would take him, none of the humane societies. But when he came in, like, he seemed so sweet. Nothing about him. Took him to the back of the clinic, and I was like, I don't want to euthanize a young dog that's healthy if it doesn't have any issues. So we looked at the clinic cat. He didn't care about the clinic cat. I had my other terrier, Voila, and I brought her in. He didn't care about that. And then my technician's daughter was there. We're like, well, pet the dog. And he was totally fine. But then we neutered him, and I brought him home, and I had full intentions of rehoming him because I talked to the owners, and they were really happy that he wasn't going to be put down, but they just didn't know what to do with him. But he was honestly the sweetest dog. Very shut down though, because he had lived outside for a year and a half, and like he couldn't even run because he had been chained up his whole life. And so started exercising him, and then I started doing agility to try to bring him out of his shell, because like he wouldn't play with toys, he wouldn't engage with my other dogs, he wouldn't come near people. Like he wasn't afraid, he was just didn't see the point. And then all of a sudden, about I think it was 6 months in or a year, he really started coming out of his shell, and then he loved it, and he loved agility. Like he was never going to win, but he was always consistent, and we did like do really well in North America. But obviously when we went to Europe, we were just happy to be there.
But it's an interesting I would say you have a different type of perspective that a lot of people have when it comes to agility, because agility, you're basically measured by performance, right? But it doesn't seem to me like you're focusing 100% that I need to get the optimal combination of dogs in order to get the best out of them. Like, what is your philosophy when it comes to training your dogs, and where did it come from?
I think, well, where it came from, I would say would be from the horses, training horses, because you train the in front of you. If you can connect and build a relationship with a horse or with a dog, they will give you so much, right?
Hey, it's Christopher here, coming in from the sideline. During the recording of this podcast, we had some technical difficulties, and we managed to get back on track, but we also lost part of the thread of the conversation. So that is why you will probably experience a rough cut. But we got back to it, and there's still a lot of value from Roxane in what's the rest of the episode. So continue to listen, and then I'll see you at the end of the episode. No problem. Where were we?
God, we were talking about how it's important for the dogs to be individuals.
Yeah.
And treating them as such and training them that way. Yeah.
Anything you want to add to that?
I think I had covered it all. Just that, to reward them based on what they actually find rewarding. And I know one of the things I did find, like when I was starting out, and granted that was back in 2004, it was very much like there was certain systems or programs that you had to follow, and your dogs had to, they had to tug, and they had to sit and have a start line in a certain way. They had to jump a certain way, and you had to run a certain way as well. And that just didn't work for some of my dogs. Like my Golden, I needed to give him information so early compared to what the thinking was at that time. And I just trained him like how I would have trained one of my horses. And that's kind of just what I went to, is I was like, this isn't working. I don't know why it's not working, but it isn't. So instead of trying to fit him into a mold, I adapted to him. And then he was phenomenal. So it was really cool.
I have two follow-up questions on that. Number one is actually, how do you switch between the different dogs, since they are individuals, in terms of your handling at competitions and training? And the second part is connected to the transferability from horse training to dog training, but we can start with the first one first.
Okay. So sometimes I make a mistake and that ends badly. So it's really important that I do run each of my dogs how I'm supposed to. So one of the things that helps me, because like back in Canada, when I'm competing here, I'm generally running 5 to 7 dogs, because I'll have my young dogs and then my real dogs that are my competition dogs, and then my older dogs that aren't fully retired but semi-retired, and I still let them come out and do a couple things. So what helps me is when I'm walking the course, I will listen to certain music that I've kind of associated with that dog's rhythm and cadence when they're running. So when I'm walking the course for, let's say, Gotcha, my little Sheltie, I have her music, I walk it, it kind of sits in my head. Then when I go and rewalk the same course for the different dog, I'll have their song, and then I walk it with that, and then I kind of have that cadence, and I'll know where I should be based on the rhythm that I'm hearing. So that helps me a lot. And then I just usually will tell myself different things based on the dog. Like my little, like Gotcha, she really wants to chase me. So I'm really wanting to make sure I use up as much of the ring as I possibly can, yardage wise, for myself, because then I should always feel like I can't get away from her. And then like with chit chat, I have to just calm down and just relax and let the dog do his job. So really thinking about those different things as I'm going to the line really help me. But it all starts with my walkthroughs with those dogs. So
That's
That
really
helps.
interesting that are you using a specific song or songs for each dog? So, like, do you have a playlist or how does it
I
work?
do. Yeah. Yeah. I have a playlist and I try to find like the rhythm that I hear or feel when I'm running that dog. Right. So, like with gotcha, it'll be like really high energy, like really loud, really fast type of music. And like with chit chat, it's more mellow. Right. So, I need to slow my brain down, slow my body down when I'm running him so that I'm still present and handling. But if I start running him like I run the Sheltie, I'm in trouble. Like the poor Border Collie will implode. So, not good.
This is really interesting. I actually love that because I also use music in terms of setting the mood. You can also say that
Hmm.
controlling your state, you can actually use music as a tool. So if you're heartbroken, don't listen to heartbroken music.
Sad
That's
songs.
listen to something else.
Yeah.
But we kind of we go into this vibe and we find thing that sort of fits that. But if you want to change it,
Yeah.
you should switch to a different channel. But it's a
Yeah.
really cool tool that you're actually using it that way, and especially when you have so different individuals and different dogs and different height
Hmm.
classes. And but you
Yeah.
do that on the course walk when you're doing multiple course walks, rounds of course walk. You're just
Yeah.
switching the songs.
Yeah. Yeah. So what I'll do is I'll set it up knowing, well, because in Canada, we don't have different courses for different heights.
Hmm.
So I could go through and have to do a walkthrough for like 5 or 6 dogs. And so I'll just put it on the playlist, all the songs for each dog. And then I will walk in the order that I will run
Mm.
as well, so that I can kind of swap out that way and it just makes sense to me. Then my brain's already, I have the muscle memory and
Mm.
then, right, so that kind of helps even when I'm about to run.
Yeah, and different songs becomes a different trigger for different states of mind that
Yeah.
you do during
So
the course
I'll,
walk.
that's right. And I'll pop it in. Like if I'm getting walking to the line, I'll just throw my AirPods in to help me switch between the dogs. And so that helps.
Cool. That's really nice.
Hmm.
That's for people listening that and running with multiple dogs. That is something that you should test out. But one thing that I want to say that you've done this with repetition, right? So it's like you've associated so much with your dog with that song, but
Yeah.
it's just you're not switching from song to song for each competition. You're actually using the same song every single course walk.
Yeah, pretty much. I used to do that with the horses too to
Mm.
maintain the cadence while I was riding because I am a busy individual and so I want to do everything really fast and to slow myself down and not rush. That really helped me.
And when you're running with the different dogs, is it like you're playing that music in your mind as well when you're running?
Yeah, because then it prevents me from hyper focusing on stupid things. So I can
Interesting.
just be in the moment with the dog. Yeah.
I talk a lot about how you can trigger the right state of mind, and this is actually a fantastic trigger that you've trained in. So I think that people should actually look into that and test that and see if it works for them. For some, it would work really well. It could be that for some, it
Yeah.
doesn't work at all, or older individuals as well.
All different. That's right. Yeah.
But I know from experience with me is like I've had a song that I visualized to so many times. I almost use it like a movie trailer music for a certain mental movie that I created that I actually managed to put into real life. And if I listen to that song now on the radio, it's like for no reason for people looking from the outside, I would just sit there in the corner and cry of joy because I'm just
Uh,
super happy because it brings up
yeah.
a lot of emotions and get me into a certain state of mind. So it's a
Yeah.
fantastic tool to use music. I
Yeah.
was,
And it's transferable too, right?
yeah,
Like you can always bring it with you. So that really helps. And it shuts out all the other chatter.
hmm, sure. And but this is something that you learned from training horses, competing with horses. And going back to
Hmm.
my second question in terms of how much has been transferable from the things you learned from training horses to training dogs and competing with dogs.
Well, I think the individuality that we talked about is a big thing.
Mm.
And with horses, you have a lot more at stake in the sense that if you make a mistake, they get angry. They're very big and they're very powerful. And you can't force a horse. Like maybe if you're like a 6'5", big, huge guy, maybe, and it's a little horse, but I can't. So right away, you had to learn on how you could communicate with that animal to make it want to do what you wanted it to do and want to enjoy it, right? Because if you're essentially, quote unquote, forcing them to do it, they're never going to give you 100%. So if you could tap that little bit where they actually wanted to do that for you, that was huge. So I do use that mindset with the dogs. And with the horses, you could have the best bred horse and it doesn't mean it's going to be successful, right? So you really had to look at each animal and see what you could do with it, what you could bring out of it. And I always found it really interesting watching how, you get one rider and the horse is phenomenal. Put another rider on, the horse like won't even trot around, right? So I was like, well, why isn't that going to be the same with the dogs, right? Like, and obviously I know like physicality can be a limiting factor. Like my Whippet will never turn as well as a Border Collie. That's fine, but the Border Collie will never have the acceleration that my Whippet can have, right? So I always try to look at what the strengths are of my animal, whether it's a horse or a dog. How can I maximize those strengths? Like Whiplash, that the rescue Border Collie that I had, and I mentioned like he was never going to be as fast as some of these other Border Collies because of his structure, but I could maximize the area that I was traveling to make my path as direct as I possibly could because he was a bit smaller and handier, that I could do that. So that's how I could stay competitive. Like obviously I couldn't win against those really fast, incredible Border Collies, but I could always be in the mix. And so I did apply that from the horses to the dogs, treating them as individuals and really trying to build that partnership so that the dog will want to do anything for me. And I do for them as well.
Yeah.
Thinking of it that way. Yeah. And the jumping, I find the jumping, I've trained my dogs to jump how I would train the horses to jump.
Yeah.
And it works.
That's an interesting thing as well, because Ailey, my partner, she's a veterinarian as well. And since I have a background in sports science and she was doing her education, I often went to her school and sat in the library just to work, to have a place to work and get some cheap coffee. So I spent some time there, and I was sitting there and I'm puzzled in terms of what's the difference between the anatomy between a human being and a horse and a dog and these type of things. I was probably, how can you say that? I was tuning into the environment that I was in. And
yeah.
It's so funny to look at just the autonomy, the names of the muscles, the Latin words or Latin names for the muscles are basically the same. There are some small adjustments, but it's kind of the same structures and building blocks, but built in different ways. And there's so much things that are transferable from, let's say, horse to dogs, but also from dogs to humans and from humans to dogs and back and forth. And I really love seeing those connections and patterns, basically, which I think is funny. And that leads me to the next part, which is conditioning. You do quite a lot of conditioning, both with horses and dogs. And it's like, what's your take on that?
It's so important. So basically, because of my schedule being the way that it is, I don't have as much time to train as I would necessarily like to. Because like if it comes down to being able to take my dogs for a hike or go training and I can only do one, I will always take them for a hike. So we typically hike every day, weather permitting. Like right now we're in a deep freeze, and I won't hike them when it's below -20 just because of their lungs. But we hike every day. So I'm fortunate that there's a lot of trails nearby. And because of the nature of my job, I often bring the dogs with me. So we can go for a hike. Like I'll build time into my day just because it's so important for them. And like the older guys, I do end up doing 2 different hikes every day just so that I can tailor it to them. But everybody still goes out and they love it. And I think it's important for their physical well-being, but also their mental well-being and mine as well.
Yeah.
So that's the major part of what I do for conditioning the dogs, and they love it.
Yeah, and I think that that's an important aspect. We also were discussing that, I think it was back in 2022, 2023, where we were looking at, okay, you could do all these different balancing exercises, cushions, and so on. But if you were to choose between a hike and doing that, we would always choose a hike because you get so
Yeah, me too.
much dynamic, and especially if you have access to a park or trails, that is just
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah.
And in terms of, well, I lost my train of thought, so I just have to say edit here. But when it comes to your time schedule, so you have your own business, you have 12 dogs, like how could a typical week look like? And how would you schedule in and fit in different training sessions?
So basically, I will try to go hiking first thing in the morning because otherwise, well, with your partner, we always have that one more horse or that one more dog that needs help. And then the day just gets longer and longer and longer. So I will go bright and early, like it's still dark out when I get to the trail. And then I do my first hike and then switch out, do the second hike, and then go and start my day. Agility training wise, I usually try in a good week, I will get 2 trainings done depending on what's going on. Like right now, we've had people in teaching seminars. So we're managing that because I also run with 2 of my friends and we're hosting trials at our UKI trials. And then we also do some seminars that we bring people in. So that changes the schedule a little bit. So then I'm not really doing any of my own trainings that week. But typically, I will try for twice a week agility training, and then we usually do sheep herding once a week in the winter. In the summer, hopefully it's easier because we have longer days, but that's typically what it ends up looking like. And then I fit in work all around that.
Yeah. And it is not necessarily much, but still there's
No.
quality enough in order to be able to qualify for the national team.
Yeah. Yeah, especially because I am dividing that training up between, like, typically I'm training 5 of the dogs. So I have the 2 main dogs that are my more seasoned. So that would be Chit Chat and Gotcha. And then right now I'm developing my younger dogs. So I have a younger Border Collie that's 3 and a bit that just had a litter. So she's had some time off. And then my young Whippet that's 4. And then I have another Sheltie. And then I'm just starting my young Border Collie. So I do try to split up the training between the young dogs and then, quote unquote, I call my real dogs, but like my competition dogs, because they're not getting as much. It's more fine tuning with them. And I just make my training count because I don't have my own building. I have to rent. So I usually go and I rent in a like 3-hour time slot and spend the first hour building whatever, because I work with online coaches. So they'll send me a course, I build it, and then I run it and video it, and then I send it to them for feedback. So I usually have about 2 hours that I'm actually actively training. Yeah.
Interesting. I was following a Norwegian track athlete, and he and his dad, they had actually looked into how much effort they actually put in a workout, like because he was doing track and different types of track running, and he won the gold medal in the last Olympics. And he said that for a
Wow.
2-hour session, he was actively doing work for 20 minutes. I think that was the case.
Wow.
Rest in between,
That
there
makes
were rest.
sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it really comes down to quality over quantity in so many ways when it also comes to our dogs, which I
Yeah,
find is
I
really,
agree.
really interesting.
Yeah. And for longevity, like it's really important to me that my elder dogs are comfortable and enjoy their retirement and don't have like bad mobility, because I still want them to be able to go and hike, and I don't want them to be injured from doing a sport either. So I do retire my dogs probably earlier than other people, but they like when I say retired, like I won't fly them, But they'll still do like local competitions, and they'll go like they still do their hikes, and they still do like their sheep herding, and we swim and all that stuff. But I want them to have a good retirement.
Yeah, I agree. In terms of when you work with clients, because you work a lot of performance, both in horses and
Mhm.
dogs, how, yeah, just thinking about a good question here. What is the advice that you give to them in order for them to improve their performance? Because they probably reach out to you because they want to get an edge
Yeah.
and they want
Yeah.
to perform better. And in horse, it's maybe more money connected to it as well, which
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
what is the number one thing that you see that you give of advice to most people?
Proper warm up and cool down.
Yeah.
And it's the same, we see the same thing with the horses that we see with the dogs, where people just pull them out of their stalls or pull them out of their crate and are like, oh my gosh, I got to go and get to the ring. I find with the horses, because the injuries are felt a little more personally, because you are on the horse, right?
Mm.
So if the horse falls or starts limping really bad, people will take almost more notice of it. Whereas with the dogs, sometimes people are like, oh, well, he walks it out, it's fine. So they might push them a bit longer than we see with the horses, and then it's usually a more significant injury. So that's one thing that I'm like, it seems stupid, but taking that 5 minutes or 10 minutes to run around with your dog or trot around with your horse and just truly warm up the body to be able to take the load that we're asking it to do is so significant.
Yeah, and I'm really glad that you say that because that was one of my big things when I was introduced to agility. I would see people just walking to their car, taking their dogs out, and going straight into the ring. And I was like, why do you do that? It's like, you're running for 30, 40 seconds. It's high
Yeah.
intensity for both the
Yeah.
handler and the dog. And if I were to give that advice to a professional athlete, they would fire me and they would talk bad about me and my career would be over. And then the same logic doesn't necessarily apply. It does apply, but not everyone is following it. So that's
Yeah.
interesting that you mentioned that as well. And even that, I was surprised that that happens in horse sports as well.
Yeah. And eventually, unfortunately, a lot of people learn the hard way,
Yeah.
right? The animals do get injured, and then it's so significant, right? And I hope that then they learn and do better each time, because I think at the end of the day, they have to come first.
Yep. I agree. Before we started recording this podcast, I asked you if there was one thing that you thought would be important to mention. And you said that the number one thing would be to never give up. What is behind that? I'm interested to see what's behind that.
Well, I just think I it's so many times, I guess, in my life, I've been told that I can't do something, right? Like, I wanted to be a vet when I was 4 years old. I was always like, oh, I'm going to be a vet. I want to work with animals. And everybody's like, oh, okay, good luck. Like, so hard to get into vet school. Like, you're not going to do it. You're not going to be able to do it. So you might want to think of other paths. And instead of going, okay, I can't, I was just like, well, I'm going to prove to you that I can do
Mm.
it. And then I worked so hard and, got my dream of being a vet, and I love every moment of it. And it's phenomenal being able to work with these animals on a day-to-day basis. And I truly love getting up in the morning and going to work. But then with the horses, it was the same thing, because I couldn't afford, the $250,000 fancy horse. And they're like, well, you can't do it. You can't be competitive. You can't win. And I did. And I was like, oh, right. And then when I started in agility, I'm running Parson Terriers, and they're stubborn and they have a mind of their own. They're like, well, you can teach it, but it's never gonna do well. And then I did. And then I got a golden, and they're like, well, the golden can't jump, so it's not gonna go well. And then I did. And I got the Kelpie, and the same thing. And then the rescues, and then the border whippets, and then the whippets. So I was like, really? Now I'm just like, It's got to be so frustrating when you're new to the sport and people tell you that about your dog. I was thankful that I had the background with the horses, that I was just like, well, whatever, I'm just going to do the best and have fun with my dogs and see how it goes. And it's gone really well. So I think that's really important for people that are coming to the sport, because it is intimidating, right? You see these dogs at the highest level doing all these skills that you're like, where do I even start? Like, what do I teach first? How do I teach it? Like, how do I get my dog that, maybe doesn't really want to run really fast do well? Well, I think I look at it as building blocks, and I put a little bit in the bank every day and build up my dogs, and then you'll be surprised at how far they can go.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that is important to mention, and I want to mention that several times, is that when you're a coach, which you are as a dog trainer, you're the dog's coach, your responsibility isn't necessarily to make a world-class dog, but it is to bring out most of the potential in the best way possible of that dog. And I think that is an important mindset as the sport grows, because it's growing rapidly, and it could turn out to something that's professional where money is involved as well in the following years. And if people lose that mindset, then dogs become a commodity and not a teammate.
Yeah. And that would be really sad.
That would be really sad.
Yeah.
That would be the beginning of the end of the sport, I think. But
yeah, I think so too.
It's important that people actually, and it's also when you get a dog from the ultimate mix, let's say, that it's bred to success, you don't know what you're getting. It's like,
no, they're still an individual.
Yeah. You're picking a puppy and you're picking it based on color. It's like, yeah, you have no idea what you're getting. And
no,
if you have super high expectations instead of seeing the individual, then you've set up yourself for a trap, I think.
Yeah, because you're putting pressure on the dog and on yourself, and the animals feel it, right? If they know that we're worried about something, they don't know why we're worried, but it just makes it so much more difficult. I think being able to just relax, enjoy the process, enjoy the journey, and not worry about it so much. Because it's that's been interesting is my young Whippet, you really get stressed in the environment. So around the judges, around the ring crew. So the first few trials I went in, she would be able to do one obstacle and then she'd just have to run. And I do use running as a reward for the Whippets because they love it. And it is so incredibly rewarding for them. So it wasn't that she was running because she was avoiding me or anything. She just had to let go of that pressure. So I was okay with that. We would do a couple obstacles and then I'd get out before she could feel the need to explode, essentially. And, people watching that were very confused at first. They're like, well, don't worry, she'll do better. And I was like, I'm not worried at all. Like, this dog in training is phenomenal. Like, it's going to come. And now as they're seeing her more, because they didn't used to trial much in Canada, but now that we're hosting trials ourselves, my dogs are coming out more, so people are seeing them, and I'm like, this is just part of the process, and it's not a big deal, right? And it's being comfortable enough to not worry about what other people are thinking or saying about those things when you know that it'll be okay.
Yeah, you're following your own pace, and the dog is setting the pace.
Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. And in terms of all these different competitions, what would you say is one of your proudest moment? Could be anything.
Oh, I think, and it's going to sound silly, but I would say two of them. One was when I ran Kapow, so he's my border Whippet, for the first time at EO. And people were standing ringside and I could hear them as I was walking out. And I don't normally hear people. And they were like, what is that? Is that a really jacked up border collie? And they were looking, and then I ran him and they were just like, oh my goodness, what is that thing? Right? Because they had never really seen one. And I was like, yeah, he's pretty cool. And then when I ran my Whippet, my older Whippet, Meep Meep, at EO, that was the one in Copenhagen, and they were just ringside watching. They're like, that's a Whippet, and it's running. And it's running well. And I was just like, that was really cool. So I thought that was amazing.
And it's running agility.
Right? And
Whippet
his
are
weaves, right? And they were, yeah, they couldn't believe his weaves. And I was like, ah, that's really cool.
Yeah. And is it because you kind of challenge most people's assumptions that you kind of
Yeah.
prove them wrong? Is that the good feeling that you get?
Well, I think it's in a way that it's so many people had preconceived notions. Like when I said to some really good friends of mine that I really wanted a Whippet because I just found the sight hounds so interesting, like watching them move, watching them run, like it's a thing of beauty. It's really phenomenal how quickly they can accelerate. And I was just like, well, it'd be really neat to be able to take that acceleration and apply it. And they're like, well, I don't know why you're getting this dog. This is so stupid. And you're never going to be on a world team with this dog. And I'm like, well, I'm not getting the dog to be on a world team. I'm getting the dog because I've always wanted a Whippet. And I think it would be really neat to see what it's like to train them. And I know they're going to be different and difficult and challenging in some way, but every dog is challenging. So I was just enjoying the process, right? So, and then that's just kind of the icing on the cake is when I'm just like, well, yeah, well, now what? Right. So I thought that was cool.
Yeah, but I can definitely relate to the fact when someone says that it cannot be done, is like, well, thank you so much for the fuel. It's just
Yeah. Yeah. It just drives me.
yeah, it's fantastic.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's really cool, and I really, it's been really really fun because I learned a lot of it because I wasn't aware of all the different dogs that you run with, and I was seeing the different height classes, but all the different breeds and that huge
yeah.
variety. It's really cool, and I think there's a lot of people out there listening to this podcast that doesn't have the standard border collie slash sheltie breed in terms of competing. And yeah, but it's fun to see that it is possible, and some are challenging most people's assumptions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
And see, never give up.
never give up. That's really cool. In terms of the coming years, so now it's a new year. It's 2026, and there's a new tryout probably coming up soon. I'm not sure, when do you have the tryouts in Canada?
Ours is April,
Yeah.
first weekend of April. Yeah.
And how does it work, the tryouts in Canada? Is it one
So
weekend?
it's one weekend, yeah, and we have different courses for small and medium. Well, small and medium is one course, and then intermediate and large is another. And so we have prerequisites in the sense that we have to attend our kennel club is the Canadian Kennel Club, so we have to attend some trials to allow us to go to tryouts. And then basically it's a one weekend. So go big or go home.
Yeah. How many runs do you have during that weekend?
5.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
is
So
it a
3 agilities, 2 jumping.
yeah? Is it a point system, or how does that work?
They kind of change the scoring every year. So I just usually never look at it because I find I don't really want to know. I'm just like, I'm just going to go and lay it out as best as I can. And then somebody will explain to me what's going on afterwards. Because I think that would stress me out, right? Because I'm
Yeah.
like, the less I know, the better. But I am thinking about it right now because we have until I think it's the second week of February to make a decision. And we have to decide whether we're applying for EO or AWC or both, and then the junior and senior as well. So I know I've already sent in my application for Gotcha and Chit Chat for AWC. Just EO is hard for me in the summer because it's a lot of it's prime horse show season. So being away, and I'm thinking I will probably apply for EO next year, not this year, because I'm waiting for my young border collie to be up and running so I could do BCC as well. So those 2 are entered, and I'm sitting on the fence for my other Sheltie and my other border collie just because they're young. And so I'm like, are they ready? So I'm kind of trying to figure that out right now, whether I'll be applying with a third this year or not. So the Whippet needs another year. I've decided that.
Yeah. And this year it's in Finland, the AWC.
Yeah, back
Yeah.
to Finland. That's
Back to
crazy.
Finland. Yeah. It's a shorter trip for us than it is for you.
Yeah, yes.
Yes.
Yes, it is. Just a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But still, we all have to go through the tryout, so there's no guarantees. So,
that's right. That's right. Yeah. We always want to go.
yeah, that's true. Well,
I want to have the headache of booking the trip.
flying to via Amsterdam or Frankfurt or something like that.
Yeah.
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 Roxane, this has been a pleasure to have you as a guest on the podcast, and I'm so happy that someone shouted your name so I could pick it up and reach out. And yeah, this has been a very, very fun conversation, and I hope to actually see you in Finland so we can continue this conversation in between all the dogs you have to warm up and run, depending on how it goes.
Well, thank you so much for having me, and it's really special. So it's awesome. So thank you. And yes, we will chat when I see you, I promise.
Fantastic. Thank you for listening in to this week's episode of the Champion's Journey. I hope that you feel inspired by Roxane. And I know that for sure that there's so many good points from this episode that all agility handlers should listen to. One thing that is important is that you might feel inspired right now, but inspiration fades unless you turn that inspiration into action. And that is really what mental training is about. It's not just about getting inspired, but moving or getting yourself from being inspired and motivated to actually taking action so that you can get the outcome that you want. Now, that is one of the core things that I work with agility handlers on over at our community. And the community is like a online gym where you train yourself from the neck up, but also in addition that has been added to it is that we also starting now to train from the neck down so that you get the tools and the resources and the commitment to do the things that will take you and your team to the next level. There is a link in the description where you can go over to the community. There's a 14-day free trial. You can check it out. If this is something that you believe will take you to the next level, then go ahead and commit to it. If not, feel free to unsubscribe. But it is a resource that is worth looking at. So I hope to see you over there. And if you haven't yet subscribed to this podcast, please do so. It's a great resource, and the more listeners, the better. So subscribe, share, and then I will see you in the next episode next week.